All right, welcome everyone back to the Practical Prospecting Podcast. Super excited today. I'm here with the CEO and co-founder of Sendoso, Kris Rudeegraap. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, top of funnel trends that we're seeing in 2023. But the first thing that I was most excited to hear about, Kris, when he reached out to me to be on this podcast is your experience going from Talkdesk to building Sendoso and being the CEO there for the last 6+ years. So I would love to hear just a little bit about your background, how you made that decision, and kind of steps and lessons along the way to building Sendoso to what it is now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jed. So I started Sendoso about 6.5-ish years ago. Prior to that, I spent about a decade in software sales. So most notably and most recently at Talkdesk, where I was an IC there. I was an account executive, prospecting, closing deals. We did have an SDR team, but I was also always prospecting myself. And what I really saw firsthand is some of the evolution of kind of email cadences and really the need to be able to add other things to email cadences besides just email. And so that's where I started experimenting with, hey, I'd send like 3 emails and then I'd send a handwritten note and then I'd, do a phone call, send more emails, and then I'd send a gift. And so I was always kind of testing out what's the right touch points in order to book that meeting or in order to help move a deal down the sales funnel too. And so that's really where I stumbled upon the efficacy and how awesome gifting and direct mail was, but it was really manual and time consuming. So it was packing boxes, it was writing notes manually, it was clicking on tracking links, it was expense reporting, and I really dreamed of a solution like, why isn't there a platform that like does all this for me? I just click a button. And so that was kind of the aha moment. It was a big aha moment because being a salesperson, account executive, to then being like, okay, I'm going to start international logistics and SaaS software company. That was a big, leap, but I knew what I wanted. And I think I was going to be the end customer at the end of the day. And so it was now just not figuring out what problem I needed to solve. It was how do I build something to solve for that? Yeah,
no, I love that. And one thing I'm actually really curious about is, how you've seen gifting change and the strategy of using gifting, particularly in top of funnel, because I know there's a lot of strategies and ways to use it, mid funnel, bottom of funnel. But how have you seen that change from back to when you started Sendoso to now? What do you see working well and what doesn't? I don't know if there's any quick tips you can give, because I've seen examples of people not doing it in the best way, and I've seen really good examples. And I want to hear from you. What do you think kind of works best?
Yeah, a few things off my top of my head that work well. So one is really thinking about the before the gift, and then the after the gift, and how to make sure you're following up and sounding smart. I think what you don't want to do is just close your eyes, spray and pray, send 100 gifts, and then just wait for your calendar to fill up. Yeah. So I think that's one, which seems obvious, but some people just think about it as just like a spray and pray technique.
Yeah.
The next one is being able to, and this is more nuanced, leveraging all the data that's out there to do more like signal or trigger-based gifting. Like someone just changed jobs, or somebody was mentioned in the news, or someone got a promotion. And so some of these different signals or intent data can really warm up the reason of why you're making that gift. I think we've also seen softer CTAs associated with gifts. So maybe top of funnel, someone's downloading a case study on your website. Rather than saying, hey, let's meet right now, I want to talk to you. It's, hey, here's a lunchy gift on me while you're enjoying this. Let me know if I can help afterwards. And so you're kind of soft CTAing out there. You're building good rapport by offering up a coffee e-gift or a lunchy gift, but you're not, force feeding it down a call to action there.
Yeah, I like that. I think specifically, like you mentioned, the trigger-based prospecting. We talk a lot about that on this podcast, and I think it just gives it an extra punch to you reaching out, and you're going to stand out from the folks who aren't using that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely not the spray and pray method. I think we've seen it both ways, but I think those are 3 really good examples. So I want to kind of go back to your experience of building up Sendoso. How has your role kind of changed throughout the last 6.5 years, and what were some of the lessons you learned along the way? I don't know if there's any big milestones you can speak to and kind of how you built that. Me personally, I'm inspired by your story, and that's something I want to do eventually. I'm sure there's lots of people that are as well. So can you talk to us about kind of some of the ups and downs and the milestones along the way?
Yeah, I'll take a quick step back, and just for those listeners who haven't heard of Sendoso yet, so we're a sending platform that helps other companies send out corporate gifts, swag, handwritten notes, you name it, we can help send it out. We integrate into your tech stack. We provide kind of an all-encompassing end-to-end solution. In terms of numbers, so I've scaled the company to over 150 million in funding. We've seen over 100 million spent through our platform. We're global. We've got customers on, across the world. Tens of thousands of people have used our platform, and millions of sends have gone through. So some good scale I've seen in the last 6 years. And I think, honestly, like every quarter, is different. I think that's one of the things I love the most. From 6 years ago, it's, hey, how do we get our first customer, to today strategizing on new pricing and packaging, or what's the vision, or what's our some bigger picture stuff. But I think across the way, I'd say there's if I had to pick 3, 4, 5 things, I'd say one of the early learnings was really thinking about hiring and recruiting methodically, and really building an engine similar to I think it's obvious you build this go-to-market engine. It's like one of the first things founders want to do is, okay, what's our go-to-market strategy? But, what is your recruiting strategy? How are you building, an engine that can be semi-automated at times to help build your talent pool, which I think is incredibly important and something that, you need to think about from day one. And if you use, for me, coming from a sales background, I use some of the same sales tactics, some of the same sales mindset when building our recruiting engine. And it really helped us for the first 100 plus employees. We didn't even have a recruiter yet, because I had some automated motions that made me a super recruiter, like times 10. So I think recruiting is a key one that some people think about too late, but really thinking about that is just like you think about your outbound, engine.
Yep.
Another one is just the importance of NRR versus just ARR. And I think a lot of early companies think about, what's our next customer? What's our ARR? What's our ARR? But NRR compounds so much, and something that I think it's important to get into your DNA early on and really think about highlighting that. And I think in the early years, you can only focus on so many North Star metrics, and most people, it's all ARR, which I think is good. And you definitely want that as one of your important metrics, but don't forego NRR by just focusing on ARR. I think another one that comes to mind is obsessing over product metrics early on. I think there's PLG companies, and they obsess over product metrics. You have to as a PLG company. And then there's a lot of like sales-led companies that maybe are like, hey, we'll just throw humans at this right now, and we'll think about, we don't need to be product-led, blah, blah, blah. But I think the best case scenario can be, there's advantages to being sales-led in the early years because you're talking to customers quite frequently. There's maybe a lot of your product that's not fully baked out yet. There's reasons why having humans in the loop very early days makes a lot of sense, but you shouldn't forego those product-led metrics that you could obsess over. So I think it's, how do you be sales-led while thinking about being a product-led metric company? And then the last thing that comes to my mind, zeroing back into the first one really around recruiting, is how do you think about like the transitions between leadership? Like, your CMO is not necessarily going to last you 10 years. What's a good Series A CMO might not be a good Series D CMO. And so how do you really think about that? How do you very cognitively thinking about the transitions, and how do you find the right people at the right time?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's all really good stuff, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think, one thing I'm curious about too, like going back to your early days starting at Sendoso, is when you started Sendoso, I wasn't even in software sales, and so one thing I really wanted to ask you was the market generally receptive to gifting? Was this a new idea? Were people like, oh, this is awesome, like, yes, we need to do this? Or was there like a transition period where you started kind of building up this? Because it kind of seems like I wasn't there at the time when you were starting Sendoso, right? But it seems like it was maybe a relatively new concept. Can you speak to that and how receptive the market was to, the idea of gifting?
So, the way that I look at it is there was billions of dollars being spent on gifting and, direct mail and swag prior to us entering in. Yep. But what we really did is we really built a software platform that could operationalize gifting at scale, and provide, a framework to do it repeatably. And so I think about it synonymous, and to make it so easy. And I think about it synonymously maybe to like the taxi to Uber situation, where like, sure, before Uber existed, there was taxis, and you could get from point A to point B in a taxi. But then once you sprinkled on Uber, it was like so obvious that you'd never want to get back in a taxi if Uber existed. And it just became so much more of the norm. And so I kind of think about that where, when in the early years, we'd run across people being like, oh yeah, like I just packed like 300 kits in my office. Like this is going to be amazing. Or you'd come across a VP of sales who's like, one of our best reps builds the best relationships. And he goes out and drops off like donuts at prospect's house when he's traveling the country or their office. And so you'd run across these stories where people would have these like passionate stories about how they've done some kind of direct mailer program. They've done some kind of gifting, but mostly manual and mostly like one-off. And so the concept wasn't necessarily brand spanking new, but the way to do it at scale was, and then we just evangelized that because now you could repeat it in your process, which means you could build out, an outbound sequence and have this being one of the steps, or marketing could include this in a campaign that might have been just digital. And so now it's something that is repeatable.
Yeah, it's a whole other channel, and I recommend anybody using it. I've been using it since I started in software sales, different methods of gifting, and it's just, everyone talks about LinkedIn, email, phone. It's a whole other channel that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of. And I think the issue is that a lot of people don't understand how to do it right. They see a lot of bad examples of people spraying, praying gift cards, but they don't really understand and know what it's like to do gifting the right way. And when you do know how to do gifting the right way, you're going to be miles ahead of everybody else. So I like that a lot, Kris. One thing, another thing I want to hear about from you, as the CEO of Sendoso, is how, what sort of trends are you seeing in sales and top of funnel? Has Sendoso's kind of strategy for top of funnel changed much at all, given the last year and a half or whatnot? What sort of things are you seeing from a high level, or any changes and stuff that you've made?
Yeah, I'll bring this one pretty tactical. So, I was talking to our CRO actually right before this. So there was a couple things we were going over and kind of reviewing some of the things. So one was, we introduced maybe 6 months ago an ROI guarantee. And so this was an interesting tactic for companies like, hey, I don't have much budget to spend right now. And so what we said was, hey, we have this ROI guarantee that we guarantee that you're going to generate ROI, and we have some parameters around what that means, a 5x guarantee based on some of the spend. And so we say, hey, we guarantee that you can do XYZ if you do this, this, and that. If not, we'll give you a refund. And so I think that's been a really tactical way that we know our system is going to work if you do X, Y, and Z. And if so, then we reduce that kind of barrier of saying like, don't have budget, because we're saying, hey, we guarantee $1 is going to equal, more than $1. So why aren't you going to do this? Yeah. So I think that's been, introducing something like that was really helpful. We've really focused more on warm intros when we can. So using our execs to make introductions, using our investors and advisors to make introductions. So warm intros is something that has really done a great job in the last year. We've done a lot more on outbound sequences that have kind of a no CTA and more of an education-based approach to some of our messaging, and really waiting for them to want to come back in inbound, or for them to say, hey, this is interesting, can I learn more? Versus hey, can you pick a time on my calendar? And so we've been trying to educate the market during these times and use that as a forward-thinking approach. The last one, you mentioned top of funnel, but I'll mention this. It's a bit more middle or bottom of the funnel, but we've done a lot around kind of CFO or finance team education. Like we've brought in CFOs and let our sales team like ask them anything. We've even we even had an external public facing webinar with 3 CFOs for our customers and our prospects to educate themselves on like how to get MarTech budget or sales tech budget approved during these times. And so that was interesting because we'd be like, hey, prospect, jump on this. You can ask, not your own CFO, but someone else's, how they think about approving tools and getting through the process. And so, again, I think for us, it was really just how do we think about these times where there's a bit more tailwinds, and then, knock on wood, hopefully we get out of this fast so it's back to the better times.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you just said 4 really good things. I want to reiterate on those. So the first one, the ROI guarantee. I haven't seen too many companies doing that, so that's really interesting. I did do a demo with it's called, I'll just shout them out, Phone Ready Leads. They help like verify phone numbers. they did something like that. It was similar. Like they'll offer a pilot.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting the I mean, that's super powerful. I think it just comes from actually believing in your product and understanding that you're going to, because if you don't believe in your product, then it's kind of hard to do that, right? Because you're going to be missing a lot of revenue. And so it's like really putting your money where your mouth is. The second one I really want to touch on, because you mentioned warm intros from your exec team, and we started using a platform called Reveal about a month ago.
Yep.
You're familiar? Okay, awesome.
Yeah. We use Reveal. We also use Crossbeam, which is similar to that. So those two work really well for some of our partner co-selling and some of the different partners that we work with. We use a tool called cosell.io and getcabal.com, and both of those work really well for warm intros to advisors and other folks in our network.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really big one because, like, inboxes are cluttered. It's harder to get meetings, so that's a really obviously a really good one. And what was the third thing you said in terms of like the three?
The third one was focusing on more education, no call to action sequences instead of overly focused on that, like grab 15 minutes on my calendar, and making sure that you're educating your buyers to the extent of making them feel like they want to go, then ask you for a demo.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think everybody, if you're an SDR and account executive, like you have expertise on whatever it is you sell. Like at Mailshake, we help with deliverability. We're educating the market on deliverability, not asking for anything in return. So you really have to like get out of that mindset of like, I need the meeting right now in that first email. And so, I mean, what sort of stuff are you guys educating on? Is it around like gifting strategies, or is it more than just that?
For us, it's really around gifting strategies, how to do that at scale, gifting strategies per use case. Like top of funnel for an SDR might be different than, a customer success manager for onboarding a new customer. We believe in a true omni-channel approach. So we want to educate on when's the right time to use a gift and an email and a phone call and social and text message, and how do you intertwine all those together in like a cohesive outbound strategy. We like to educate on like ABM and how you can do account-based marketing or account-based sales development, account-based everything. Those are some of like our key areas of focus.
Yeah, love that. And then the last one I really like as well, you said you're getting people like CFOs and Ask Me Anything sort of, webinars or calls, that sort of stuff. Exactly. That was a huge help for me as well. And I went internally to like, my CRO, we sold to HR as well. So I go to my VP of HR and you get a lot of insights, but I think particularly from other companies where it's like you're not hearing the same stuff is really helpful. So is that, did I hear that right? Are you doing like webinars?
So we did both internally for revenue enablement across the customer and revenue facing teams. Nice. And then externally, we actually ran a couple for just the world to hear, and really focusing around, again, back to the education piece. Other marketers, other sales leaders, other buyers are thinking in the same boat. Hey, how do I get my CFO to approve this budget? How do I get my CFO to take on this initiative? And so, having them feel empowered is helpful as well. Awesome.
Well, Kris, I feel like there was a lot of tactical stuff that you gave, so there's a lot of good stuff to break down. I'm going to re-listen to this myself. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience before we jump off?
No, I mean, I'm always open to networking and talking to other folks. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn, follow me, shoot me an email, Kris, K-R-S, @sendoso.com. Let's chat more.
Yeah, absolutely. And check out Sendoso, guys. I'm a big fan of gifting strategies. Kris, thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jed.